Be the change you wish to see in this world.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, George Valenzuela.
This is education coach George Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it. We're here today with Ari Gerzon-Kessler. Ari leads the Family Partnerships Department for Boulder Valley Schools and is an educational consultant. He's also a Solution Tree author and a new friend of mine. How are you?
Wonderful. It's so great to be with you. Thanks for this opportunity.
I love that you excel in three major areas of your life. Number one, you put your family first. Two, you're very dedicated to educational consulting. And three, you're very passionate about spending time in nature. Before we dive into these topics, please introduce yourself to our audience.
My name is Ari Gerzon-Kessler, and I have a wonderful wife named Sashi and a daughter named Selah, who's a year and a half, and where my true passion is now, in addition to the book and the consulting and working close with families and educators. She's been a dream long time in the making. So lots of gratitude for my daughter right now, who just turned 16 months old the other day. And then I have a tremendous passion to spend time in nature. I live right outside of Boulder, Colorado, where there's a lot of natural beauty.
Jamila Loving at Solution Tree from time to time reaches out and recommends authors she feels are excellent for this show. Ari, you're one of those people, and I'm so excited to speak with you today. This is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast. And on this show, we focus on self-improvement by interviewing people who are excelling in three important areas of their lives so that we can learn from them to experience similar success. Ari, tell us about your family and why putting them first is so important to you.
Yeah, one big reason, Jorge, that to me family is so vital is the way that it's an opportunity to continue living out my values. And I have tremendous gratitude. All four of my grandparents were immigrants who made tremendous sacrifices to leave countries where they were under some sort of threat or danger and make the arduous journey to the United States. And upon arriving, made so many different sacrifices that I just feel a tremendous level of indebtedness to my grandparents and other ancestors. So from my earliest days, having an awareness of their journey, and then when I was an undergrad, writing my grandmother's life history as my senior thesis, I've just developed this deep appreciation for family and the sacrifices we make for those that we love, and the way that we try to not only instill the values that we care about, but plant seeds that will help the future generations. So a lot of my work in education is actually sparked by that gratitude for my own family and what they've been able to create for future generations by so much thoughtfulness and sacrifice. And then I've wanted to be a father for more than 20 years now. It happened last year. So I'm in a spot where I don't for a moment take for granted the privilege and the joy and the challenges of getting to be a parent.
You're a new father?
Yes.
Tell us about that journey.
It feels miraculous. Like I said, it's been 2 decades of wanting that, some disappointments along the way. There's just so much pleasure and joy. Since I was probably in middle school, I would go and volunteer at the local Head Start, did the same thing as an undergrad. So I've always had a deep love for the lightheartedness and innocence and purity and sweetness of kids. So to have my own child has just been a total delight. Our daughter has a fever now going on 3 days. She's been up most of the last 2 nights. And that to me is one of the more challenging. I can roll with a lot of professional challenges, other challenges, but to have that intense cry at 3 a.m. and again at 4 a.m, it requires a wellspring of love there to stay patient and deeply caring in those moments. I'm humbled by the experience as well.
I can definitely relate. I remember 21 years ago, I became a father to a daughter, and I remember being very nervous and very excited at the same time. It was the first time in my life being in love with someone and not ever having to worry about it ending.
Well said. Well said.
Over the years, she's become a trusted friend, a great companion. I can definitely see what you're going through, and I commend you, brother. It's a very important step, and it's most probably the most important thing that we'll get to do.
I appreciate what you said about it being a chance to love with that kind of lifelong quality to it. And I was a foster dad about 17 years ago, and that didn't become a forever thing. So through that heartbreak and that experience, there's an even deeper gratitude of this is my daughter, and I get to travel with her till my final days. So yeah, I'm with you.
Ari, what's an important lesson you learned as a kid, which has helped shape who you are now?
One lesson that comes to mind as a kid was really this sense of service and to be of support to others. I was just sharing earlier this morning, in fact, one of my heroes and mentors is the Vietnamese monk named Thich Nhat Hanh, who was actually nominated by Martin Luther King for Nobel Prize decades ago. And my mom was a teacher, and she luckily, at the age of 11, she pushed me to go on a retreat with him. And then again at 13, I saw the way that he showed up with a level of compassion and presence with other people, even when he wasn't speaking, that was truly inspiring to me. And the way he blended that with service to social justice and to the well-being of all people, that was a profound lesson that kind of stuck with me since that first connection with him at the age of 11.
Wow, you met Teak at 11 years old?
Yeah, to spend a few days in retreat with him. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I became aware of him and some of his quotes through the work of Eckhart Tolle. On my 45th birthday, I got a book, his book, and it's on that shelf back there. Ari, navigating relationships with family isn't always easy. What's your secret weapon?
I think one of the key pieces is around our beliefs. As I write about and on the same team, I now know as a father how much we care about our children thriving and their well-being. So each family has a tremendous desire to see their kids thrive. And if we as educators can come from that mindset that they're deeply committed and determined, that when we extend our self to partner with them, there's really a chance for a deep relationship between us as families and educators that will ultimately have a host of benefits for our students. To me, that mindset's a key piece, and then that we're putting a lot of best practices. I've heard many parents lately lament in our schools. I get to connect with my child's teacher at conferences, see him at back to school night, but don't always have much of a relationship in between. And so part of the work that I've been really enjoying in recent years has been helping educators find very efficient but deeply relational, meaningful ways to connect with families, and then seeing the host of benefits it has for everybody.
There's a lot of new parents. What is one way parents can be present with their young children?
Engaging their child's curiosity and also posing great questions. I've been in a number of our families and educator together teams in the last few weeks. Beautiful way to not only have parents learn from each other, but as educators who happen to be parents, we're learning from our families. The question is, what do you ask your child after they come back from school? The cliche is, how'd your day go, son, daughter? Good. Okay, great. And so it's been really inspiring to hear different parents share great questions that they ask their kid that then sparks a nice back and forth and leads their child to own their learning and find more joy in it and be reflective and start seeing their parent as an extension of their learning at school.
Folks out there listening, be present with your kids. And one way of doing that is through reflective questioning. Don't just ask questions that require a yes or no answer. Make sure it's open-ended and show interest in what they say. Fantastic. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning. And now for a word from one of our sponsors. Are technology issues slowing you down at your school? If that's the case, look no further than 5-Star Technology's Virtual Help Desk. Their team of experts are available to support you remotely, resolving up to 40% of common issues like password resets, device connectivity, and lots more. With just a few clicks, you'll have access to their live chat from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Just enter your email to get started. Then you'll live chat with one of 5-Star's EdTech experts to diagnose your problem. And if their virtual help desk agent can't solve the issue completely, they will dispatch the ticket to your school's on-site tech team. Let 5-Star Technology Solutions be your support partner. Experience their virtual help desk, which is affordable, efficient, and always there for you. Please contact them at 5startech.com/contact us. Once again, 5startech.com/contact us. And for your convenience, you'll find this link in the episode's show notes. Now let's transition into educational coaching and consulting. You are a consultant with Solution Tree, and you also have your own company. Ari, how did you get into coaching educators?
Yeah, my passion early on was for teaching students, and then I felt really inspired around achievement and opportunity gaps. And so early in my education career, I was a bilingual elementary teacher and saw my students thriving. And this was at a school that was the lowest performing school in our district of dozens of schools. And yet, after a couple of years, learning from tons of books and experts and mentors and applying those practices to the classroom, I saw what was possible, and my students were thriving. And so that really led me to take on more leadership as well as share some of the insights I was gaining. My mother passed away about 14 years ago, and she was a pioneer in the field of SEL. She wrote a book called The Soul of Education. And a lot of my classroom practices were about creating a relationship-centered classroom a couple decades before that became more common practice. That inspired me to want to go work with other teachers. And so I began to lead workshops and retreats and coach teachers around how to integrate SEL and cultural responsiveness more into their classrooms. I've been doing that for close to 20 years now. And then I went on to work as a principal. And when I left the principalship, I realized some of my greatest celebrations and regrets were around working with families. So when this opportunity to lead a family partnerships department for a district with 56 schools came up, I thought it was a great opportunity. And so through that, the heart of that job has been coaching individual FET team leaders, as we call them, the Families and Educator Together teams, as well as coaching and supporting school leaders. It's one of the most rewarding parts of my work is that coaching piece, as well as helping them co-facilitate gatherings where they can really effectively bring people together across cultural, linguistic, racial, and other differences, and cultivate a true sense of collaboration in those spaces, which I think is rare in many of our schools today.
Ari, being an educational consultant isn't easy, especially in 2024. What are 3 pieces of advice that you would give someone who's just starting out?
Yeah, and I guess some of this would be advice to myself, because I've been so immersed in this close work with 24 of our schools that in some ways I'm in the early phases of my consulting around family partnerships, even though I've been steeped in the research and practice for many years now. One would be expand your network. As a natural introvert for me, that wasn't easy at first, and yet I found tremendous joy and meaning in reaching out beyond my local kind of walls to folks in different states and even different countries and developing new relationships, which is just so gratifying. And I learn a lot from that. So that one piece would be expand the network. A second piece would be, as is the title of your podcast, or lifelong learning, like that deep commitment to continued learning. I see books. I think Malcolm X might have said, he said, education is my passport to the future. And I think books are this incredible passport that can be right beside us at any moment to do so much deep lifelong learning. So I'm a voracious reader. If you can draw on a wealth of diverse perspectives. And then third would be to make sure in the work that you're centering it around what the school or the individual practitioner most needs, that it's not just dropping a bunch of ideas or expertise, but really catering it to what your audience most needs and will most help them thrive in the work that they're doing.
Ari, your new book, Through Solution Tree, is called On the Same Team. Your book addresses bringing educators and families together. This is super important, especially today. I feel like your book will continue to be relevant in education for a few years. Can I read a part of your book?
Please. Yeah, sounds great.
It's from the section, Our Current Reality. As I write this, 3 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, our public school system is struggling. At both the school and district level, there are unprecedented levels of divisiveness, overwhelm, and fatigue for both families and educators. Politics and culture wars have increasingly entered the classroom, and with them, a cloud of mistrust has descended on the U.S. school system. Ari, I read your book, but for the audience, please explain how educators and parents coming together can help with all the issues facing schools today.
It reminds me of the head of Baltimore schools, Sonia Santelice. She said, we're at a crossroads where we learned in the pandemic about the partnership that's possible, right? Parents were having cameras. They were also tracking their kids' learning in a way they never have been able to before. We saw glimpses of a new way of partnership, yet many would say that we came back to school and fell into the same old patterns of the family involvement approach and a lack of true collaboration. Sonia Santelice said, we have a choice now at this crossroads. We can either fall back on those old patterns and have families essentially lose faith in us, or we can embrace this as an opportunity. So I feel like I've seen now at probably 800 to 900 gatherings of families and educator together teams, which is this unique structure that's been a joy to be part of creating locally, that when families come together with educators, in a way that's truly reciprocal and focused on creating a more inclusive, equitable community, both for families and for the staff and for students, tremendous transformation is possible. Creates a deeper sense of belonging for students and families. It helps educators grow in such a variety of meaningful ways that truly that idea of the trinity of student, family, and educator that I remember reading a poem about before my conferences with parents. When we work in unison, learning is so much more profound and accelerates learning. To me, that partnership is ripe and ready to be there, yet we're often not utilizing the potential that's there. We're keeping families at a distance. As a superintendent told me last week, he said, sometimes we're afraid of parents. We're keeping them away when in fact, they're the expert on their child. I've just seen how many different benefits emerge when we engage in more partnerships with families.
Ari, there is someone reading or looking at your book and they want to be an author. They want to be like you. What advice would you give them?
I'd say first, Jorge, persistence. For me, I spent 10 years working on one book that, I still haven't yet published. This book came to me, was so fueled by so much passion. So I would also say, in addition to persistence, the discipline. I always remember reading Stephen King's book on writing, and he says, if you just write one page a day, each day of the year, you got almost 400 pages there that can be edited down to a more enjoyable size. That steadiness is a key, I think, to becoming an author. And then letting your passion fuel what you write about. For me, I get home after these families and educator together meetings, and I was capturing stories from those meetings because I felt so touched and moved by something a parent said, a principal said, a teacher said. So yeah, staying with passion. And then the final piece I would share would be, they always say that the best writers read a lot. And for me, I constantly get ideas, inspiration, and insight from reading as many books as I can. And that's serving as a model. Just like we have our youngest students, they read mentor text. And so to me, that idea of just continuing to read a lot to fuel your writing life.
That's fantastic. I started out 6 years ago when I went into consulting for myself, writing 90 minutes a day. I no longer have 90 minutes a day to write, but I try to stick to 500 words a day. It's not exactly a page, but it's almost a page. I completely relate.
Inspiring. I like that. Either the word limit, aim, or the minutes. I appreciate that.
And now for a word from one of our sponsors. If you're a STEM and PBL teacher like me, you're always on the lookout for new project ideas and resources. You know George does PBL, and I'm telling you, look no further than SmartLab. SmartLab really has a fresh take on STEM and PBL. I'm proud to be a partner, and they sponsor the podcast. But just don't take my word for it. Check out what other educators are saying about SmartLab.
When students enter into SmartLab, they are allowed to think outside of traditional norms.
It gives them a lot of agency. They feel empowered and important. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the SmartLab environment and the way the project process is set up.
SmartLab becomes this place where they can do those things and have the time and space to communicate better and even deal with social emotional stuff. They're having a bad day. A SmartLab's a place where we can change the pace of what they're learning to match their mental needs for the day. And that comes back tenfold later on when they want to be there and they want to learn and they want to do stuff and they feel safe and they feel like they can get the things they need.
That's one of the big benefits of being in more of a collaborative environment is it makes you have to work. It makes you have to be accountable.
Please look in this episode's show notes for a link to connect with SmartLab. Now let's talk about your passion for spending time in nature. Tell us about this passion and how did it start?
Yeah, it's where I find a lot of my joy, my grounding. I grew up in California is where I lived for elementary and middle school. So being close to the ocean planted a seed of just the immense quality of nature. And I always love how it puts my life in perspective. I study Zen and they talk about our small self, our ego, and then being connected to everything. And I think nature takes me out of my small worries, my goals, a lot of the stuff that puts me more in my head than into my heart. So I think one reason, Jorge, that I love nature is it catalyzes a sense of connectivity with all things and puts me in a just right perspective. I live 10 minutes from the mountains. And when I look up or stand near the mountains, it reminds me how small my concerns and worries and my successes are. And that's a big piece of it. And then I love the sense of tranquility and stillness because I'm a pretty active person. So when I'm out paddleboarding on a lake near home, or I'm walking with my family and dogs on a trail in the mountains, there's this sense of being uplifted by beauty and slowing down at a rhythm that just connects me more with my soul in a way that really feeds me and nourishes me and rejuvenates. Because the pace of this world today, I find if I'm not in nature, then I join with the frantic, busy nature of our full culture, and nature helps me step back a bit.
Ari, there's a lot of people out there, myself included at times, that are from major cities and we didn't grow up in nature or even exposed to nature, but we want to try to be. What advice would you give us? How should we start?
Yeah, I'm thinking about even just having those, I don't remember what they're called, but when you've got like the little rolling stream of water falling onto a stone, just even the sound of nature on a windowsill or at a table with some rocks that the water's flowing through, bonsai tree, some of those little smaller pieces though that are full of vitality. I think that's one way. And finding an opportunity, and this is something I need to work on doing better, is every few weeks or at least every couple months, getting in the car and driving to a space and being in nature, at least for a few hours, if not for a day or two, I think really helps reset our internal systems in a great way. We've got hot springs, and before our baby arrived and things got really full, we would go to the hot springs 2 times a year just to have a full day of stillness soaking in those hot tubs.
That's a fantastic answer. Folks out there listening, search for stillness, search for nature, spend a couple of days or one day driving each month and finding that place near you, or just going somewhere where there's nice scenery. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning. We are now winding down with Ari, and we're going to get into the quick fire question round of the podcast. Ari, what are your top 3 ed tech tools?
One would be Google Translate. I'm constantly working with our educators to ensure that families get communication they need and deserve in the language of their preference. And then Talking Points is an app that has become one of probably my 3 main goals in my day-to-day work, which is let's respond, as parents regularly tell us in our FET team gatherings, I want communication via text. I'm bombarded by emails. And so Talking Points is a phenomenal app that translates text from educators into 150 plus languages and just has been a real game changer in fostering more two-way communication and much greater trust, especially between our educators and underrepresented families. A final tool would simply be Google Docs. I'm finding now that as I support 24 schools closely, I'm creating a family partnerships toolkit that eventually all of our educators in our school district can use. But right now I'm working with our 65 FET leaders, the 25 community liaisons I work closely with, and we're co-creating this toolkit. So to me, having those shared documents is a really powerful resource.
Ari, what is your favorite education book other than yours, and why?
My mom's book is coming to mind. She wrote in 2000 a book called The Soul of Education, and she talked about 7 gateways for the soul. One of the most informative books to my teaching and my current role in district leadership, because it talked about how do you cultivate spaces of high trust where people can show up and be their full authentic selves, be valued for who they are, and engage in a space where there is transformation through that genuine collaboration. So I think that book was a model for me, a pathway to how to create the kind of spaces that I'm now actively coaching folks around to create meaningful, transformative actions that are co-created by families and educators across so many differences.
Ari, what's your favorite education conference and why?
Solution Tree does a number of incredible conferences where collaboration and learning and what's going to be of best service to the field are really in the forefront. So Solution Tree conferences, and really any space where there's an opportunity to learn from people from a variety of different states and different roles, because it's easy to go to conferences that are just one focus area. So that's dynamic to be about best practices in their town or city.
Ari, what are 3 things that people should do every single day?
First would be weaving in some sort of inspirational learning to the morning, even if it's as simple as reading a page of text that gives perspective or is invigorating. I'm a deep believer in time outdoors, so getting that sunlight and connection outdoors. Third, I would have to choose exercise and or mindfulness, whether it's for the body or the mind, something that's going to be truly awakening so that we can each step into our day as prepared to bring our best selves forward. And I find that blend of exercise, nature, a little bit of meditation, and then reading something that's going to be uplifting as a good foundation for each day.
Ari, I picked 3 things I love and respect about you. And just to recap, you put family first, you're a great education consultant, and you're passionate about spending time in nature. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want the people watching or listening to know about you?
One piece I want to share, and I appreciate the opportunity, is I see the summer months as educators to plant the seeds for deeper work the following school year. And I would just invite any of you that are educators wanting to build stronger bridges between your school and underrepresented families to reach out if you want support, especially in those June, July months where we have so much more capacity. Because with these families and educators, we found a kind of secret sauce for how to foster truly meaningful collaboration that helps educators grow in so many ways by creating that space and designing it based on what we've learned through hundreds of these gatherings. So I would encourage folks to reach out on that end and to find ways to build in time. If you're a school leader listening, to build in, it might be 10 minutes at the end of a staff meeting where you say, hey, everybody, go make 2 positive phone calls, or we're going to make 1 home visit this next month to deepen our relationship with one student's family. Really carving out those small bits of time is something I've seen work so well for both individual educators as well as whole schools. So those are 2 things I'm feeling particularly passionate about right now.
This is the part of the show where I give you your flowers. I don't believe in telling people how I feel about them when they're gone. So here goes. Ari, you're doing amazing work. I love your book. I think it's commendable that you're trying to unite educators and parents. You may not see the impact of that work in your lifetime, or maybe you will. But regardless, the impact is there and it will be there. I want to thank you for your work. It's a pleasure to speak to you today and get to know you. And I hope that moving forward, we can build a relationship.
I would love that. Thanks for this opportunity. It's been really uplifting, inspiring just to engage in such meaningful conversation with you. And I'm just so grateful and appreciate the model you've been of how to bring your heart and passion out into the education world in a way that plants so many meaningful seeds. So really appreciate this back and forth and hope it's the first of many.
All right, let's put this in the universe. Ari, how can people contact you so that you can come speak at their conference, at their event, or at their school?
The easiest way would be to find me on LinkedIn, Ari Gerzon-Kessler. You could also email me at arigerzon@gmail.com. Also, you can find me on Facebook as well. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
That's it for this episode. Until next time, this is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with George Valenzuela.